Hi, I'm Joe, a sensitivity educator. Today I like to talk to highly sensitive people, HSPs, who are afraid of people but crave connection and carry a sense of isolation inside. In reality, many struggle with this, wondering if it's a contradiction to fear people while simultaneously wanting to connect and wishing to avoid isolation. But I want you to know this is a natural reaction. So today, backed by psychology insights, I'll break down the mechanism and offer a practical guide on what you can actually do from here. So I hope you'll stick around until the end. Number one is people are wired for social connection. First, let's look at this question. Is it a contradiction to be anxious around others and also be afraid of isolation? This is a very common struggle I hear. You might worry that it's a strange mix to be interested in people, but you always pull back from connection. But the baseline in this case is there is interest in people. People who have zero interest in others, those with a solitary nature, make up only about 2% of the global population. They genuinely thrive in solitude, and their performance actually drops when they are around others. But unless someone falls into that 2%, humans are social creatures who experience happiness through connection. So by nature, the desire to belong is always there. The fear or dislike of others is actually proof that the connection still matters. This is easy to see through romantic situations. If you push someone away or feel deeply self-conscious around them, that interest is there. That's why things can instantly flip the moment you see a sign of their affection. Real disinterest means feeling absolutely nothing. The opposite of love is not hate. It's a complete lack of interest. As long as you dislike somebody, you are interested. Because this underlying interest exists, it's not a contradiction. We see this across other social species as well. For instance, wolves live in tight packs where each member has a distinct responsibility. Humans are no different. We naturally adapt to roles, blending into groups, and survive together. So when we develop a fear or dislike towards people, it's most likely because of a past experience. For example, experience like being humiliated in public, laughed at, or making a major mistake. Perhaps during a presentation or an evaluation, the outcome simply fell short of expectations. When this happens, those experiences turn into a protective habit, making you passive and cautious of people. Yet in this state, the underlying need for connection and validation actually grows stronger. That's why the fear of people often coexists with a deep desire to be accepted, creating a painful contradiction. But as we discussed, it's actually not a contradiction. When you become aware of this duality, I struggle with people, but I still wish to be valued and seen, the natural willingness to connect will return. But of course, it's important to take it in small steps. For instance, just because you understand this mechanism doesn't mean you should force yourself to join an activity and talk in front of 60 people. It's simply too much too soon. Doing that will only deepen your fear and leave you further conflicted inside. However, talking with 2 or 3 people or meeting a couple of new faces is likely manageable. And it's even better if the interaction has a clear, structured purpose. As a sensitivity educator, I occasionally organize small feedback sessions with a handful of people. In these meetings, I host a group and use my psychology background to uncover common patterns in areas like work-related struggles. For HSPs, having a set theme makes it much easier to open up. Plus, having a moderator present creates a predictable environment where you can speak with a peace of mind. By using this kind of structured space as a starting point, you can gradually get used to it. It allows your nervous system to learn that people are safe, people are kind, and that you do have a place where you can speak. And through that safety, as the fear begins to fade, you can finally embrace your honest desire to like people and be loved, allowing you to naturally take your own next steps. So as a first point, please remember that humans are social creatures. Even if you feel a fear of people, as long as you still have an interest in them, that feeling is not a contradiction. Number 2 is maintain a sense of social curiosity. When you develop fear towards people, it's natural to feel yourself pulling away and losing interest simply because interaction feels scary. Yet, the very act of trying to lose interest proves that the connection still matters to you. You're just doing whatever it takes to hide that vulnerability simply because you are scared. A clear example of this is social withdrawal. Deep down, you want to be loved, you want to share experiences, but because it feels out of reach, you retreat entirely into your own shell. When this happens, you lose touch with the outside world, and talking to people start to feel harder and harder. You can still communicate online, but it's hard to replace the real thing. This is because without being face to face, our brains miss out on the full depth of what science calls interpersonal synchrony, that natural connection with another person. Driven by social media and changes in family dynamics, the baseline communication skills are dropping. In an environment like this, if you don't create points of contact, the anxiety of how do I interact will only build up, making it seem harder and harder to face people. That's why I want you to at least maintain a sense of social curiosity. This simply means holding on to the feeling. If there's something I can join, maybe I'll give it a try. It's about not letting your baseline interest in people vanish completely. Again, this is also easy to see in romance. After a heartbreak, getting close to somebody again can feel scary. But if you can maintain that subtle feeling, if I meet somebody nice, I might want to go on a date, and then attend a gathering or connect with somebody online, that opens up the possibility of hitting it off and becoming partners. So this can simply be something you already find interesting. In fact, it doesn't even have to involve people at first. For example, you might just want to check out a local cafe or try an outdoor activity. When you lean into these interests, they naturally bring a high chance of crossing paths with people. So if others happen to enter your activity, I hope you won't fear that connection too much and find just a little courage to welcome them. For example, I sometimes organize events for HSPs, so you might just think, maybe I'll try attending that as a test. Of course, traveling far for an event can be tough, but if a similar gathering happens to be right in your local area, you'd probably feel it's much easier to go. In that case, you can find more courage and take that step. So by setting your own boundary, like deciding I'll join if it's at this location or this type of group, it drastically lowers the mental barrier. So I hope you can start by simply preparing like this in the back of your mind. Next, number 3 is letting your human side show. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but to build deep connections, it's essential to show your human side. Your human side is simply the part of you you'd rather hide. For example, in business, we often want to project a flawless, highly capable image, assuming it's the solid way to generate sales. But that only creates a superficial relationship. Truly capable salespeople actively show their human side. They might share things about their family, talk about their past failures, or open up about their life story. By creating these touch points, they build a real connection, which sometimes turns into grabbing a coffee or a drink with their clients. Even though it is business, they drop their shoulders, share their imperfections, and skillfully deepen the bond. Of course, not everybody needs to do this. So simply put, your human side is your flaws and mistakes, and the important thing is knowing that it's okay to show them. Ironically, the people who are scared of interaction are often the ones who believe they must always be flawless, cool, or attractive to be accepted. But consider the concept of charm. Someone with charm isn't always cool or highly attractive, yet they are loved simply for that charm. And that's because they show the imperfect human side most people try to hide. For example, they might start talking on mute during an online meeting, or realize they don't know something that everybody else does, like remembering the title of a famous movie or song completely wrong, so things like that. We generally perceive not knowing as a source of deep shame, But showing that flaws actually signals safety. It lets people comfortably step in to share their knowledge, allowing a natural bond to form. I intentionally show my human side in my videos too. My facial expression tends to show easily, so I don't try to hide them. That alone is a form of imperfection. I don't always speak perfectly and I stumble over my words, but I've accepted that's just who I am. So these little imperfections are exactly what turns into charm. Seeing these things can make you realize I was constantly trying to project an ideal version of myself to the world. Once you understand that letting go of perfection is actually the key to deep connection, that persistent fear of people should begin to soften. Next, number 4 is cultivate places with familiar faces. Deep down, I think there's a longing to connect with people, but without knowing how, even if you tell yourself, I'm going to make a best friend right away, it simply won't work out. Instead, the key is to slowly build a circle of people who are slightly more than just complete strangers. By that, I mean acquaintances or familiar faces. It's noticing things like, I always see that person at this park, or going to the same cafe where the same staff always greets you with a "how are you?" At this point, you are no longer complete strangers. You've become familiar faces. Someone you just pass on the street is a total stranger. The staff and customers at a shop you visit for the first time are total strangers too. But once you start exchanging casual nods with the regulars at your usual spot, they are no longer strangers. Becoming a familiar face means that for the first time, you are recognized as an individual, as you. Again, romance provides a clear example. Let's say you find the supermarket staff attractive. To them, you are just a customer. Even if you suddenly confess your feelings, it won't work because you're still a complete stranger to them. But if you gradually become a familiar face and they start saying, "Hey, you come here often," they recognize you as an individual. Only from this baseline can they start thinking, "They seem nice," or "I'd like to get to know them." But of course, even then, it still might not work out. But by being a familiar face, at least your chances aren't zero if you ask them out. More broadly, it's not just about romance. I want to encourage you to start cultivating these low-stake, familiar connections. The trick to connecting is simply letting them see your face frequently, even just for a short moment. Spending an entire day with somebody doesn't guarantee a bond. In fact, studies show that short, frequent interactions are more effective at creating friendly feelings and a sense of closeness. This is called the mere exposure effect. So see if you can find a spot you can easily drop by frequently. It could just be somewhere like a local cafe or a gym. For me, there are a few local cafes I go to. I was a bit nervous at first, but now whenever I feel lonely, I'll drop by. And since the staff knows my face, we'll just exchange a quick greeting or a few words. It's really something brief usually, but it helps ease that loneliness and helps me feel connected to society. Besides, by keeping these touch points brief and small, we HSPs can enjoy interacting without getting too exhausted. So by finding these spaces, you'll naturally cultivate more familiar faces and slowly open the door to deeper connections. And finally, number 5 is cultivating online connection as well. Earlier, I mentioned the limits of online communication, but that doesn't mean you can't find a meaningful connection or a sense of belonging online. It's definitely possible. The thing is, the online world is actually a great place to start building that light familiarity. It's perfect for the very first step. For example, even in the comment section of my videos, everyone is unique with their avatars. I often recognize people by their avatars and think, this person always leaves a comment, or this person brings this unique perspective. And that's how I gently hold these details in my mind. This means I already see them as unique individuals. For instance, if I were to hold an HSP gathering and people from the community attend, the moment somebody says, "I'm the person with this avatar," they're no longer strangers. It naturally opens up the door to say, "You always share those nice comments, thank you." Therefore, online connections can actually serve as a preparation step for face-to-face meetups. This isn't about chasing follower counts or anything. It's about establishing a recognizable presence. Setting up a unique avatar, using a distinct handle, and finding the courage to engage online lays the groundwork. When you eventually attend a physical meetup, that shared context is already there, making it a lot easier to talk. Once you have that common ground and feel that it's not too hard to talk, you naturally find yourself wanting to share more, and that comfort turns into a deeper connection. And in a niche community like this channel and its comment section, anonymity acts as a safe shield, making it easier for you to open up about things that are usually hard to share with people around you. When you eventually meet offline, that human side of yours is already understood and accepted. Since you've already shared things like past struggles or mistakes, you can feel more at ease when you talk about them, which helps that comfort turn into a deeper connection. So I hope you can utilize online spaces strategically to build your social safety net. So today we looked at the mechanisms of being afraid of people yet genuinely wanting to connect, a quiet contradiction that so many HSPs live with every day. Here at Sensipath, I share insights tailored for highly sensitive people, blending science and psychology with my real-life experience as an HSP. While HSP traits fall under personality psychology, attention often tends to center around the 4 core temperaments, which I explained in a different video. But what truly matters, I think, is focusing on the personality shaped by the environment and learning how to navigate it. So I offer practical frameworks that address these struggles at a structural level. I think you'll find the information here helpful, so I'd be happy if you stay connected. That's all for today. This was Joe from Sensipath.